Hey, what's going on? So it's Monday evening right now, around 6:30, and we're going to be going over the week 2 November, so last week's price action for the indices here. So first we got ES. Looking at this 3-week look back, right? This is basically the same. It's the identical format to last week's weekly review, so collecting these data points as we go through time, right? Either way, we got the high and low. Got that high of week Wednesday at 4. London session high, very interesting. Um, as far as the template as well, interesting sort of like reversal weekly template. See that early week, essentially Judas swing, as we walk our way higher. Putting in that high of week, consolidating here, Judas swing, one final Judas swing, very interesting. Thursday open was this candle right here, so very interesting timing as well. See the Wednesday and the Thursday high of day, essentially locking that in, right? Expanding lower, so pretty interesting week in my opinion. Similar type of action on NASDAQ as well, but we'll get into that. Pretty fascinating. NASDAQ traded to and through this respective low, while ES did not trade to and through it, right? So we see that divergence as well. It's interesting how, we're looking for these, essentially just examples of that type of, price action divergence. And I think typically it's looked for on the lower time frames or the intraday charts. And it's fascinating how we see this sort of this like time defined example as that weekly range. So yeah, either way, we got this, 230 handle weekly range. Again, same look, right? The price engine. We got to start with consolidation. The only thing that can follow consolidation is expansion. The only thing that can follow expansion is retracement or reversal. The only thing that can follow retracement is reversal, right? Like that retracement becoming the reversal or another expansion, which we see here for Monday, right? Then expansion, eventually goes to consolidation. Then we expand. Could also read this as simply a retracement. Either way, look at it. But very fascinating, right? Despite like the multiple steps within the day, we still are in alignment with the price engine. See that consolidation, Judas swing, then we go higher, consolidation, hunting the intraday, the overnight profits, putting in that low of day. Very interesting, right? Turtle soup, right? I mean, you can see it visually, but this is lower than this. Putting in that low of day at 11. Simultaneously, kind of fascinating interaction with first presented fair value gap, for the week as well, just as its own concept, as its own thing to study, and really its own sort of architecture within the weekly range. So, yeah, either way, on to Tuesday, right? Simply retracement to expansion, retracing into that Monday range, expanding higher. Here we see that expansion, that continuation really of the expansion from Tuesday. We then reverse and then consolidate. Could even be read as a retracement, right? Depending on how you look at it, right? Was this a retracement or a reversal? My opinion, it was a reversal, sort of just based on like if we're just framing intraday, like what's happening within the day, we are like reversing intraday. So that's also an interesting way to, sort of like compare and contrast different price engine perspectives, I think, is like, weekly ranges, like certain framings to essentially judge like this delivery here. So, kind of a side note, kind of a potential back test, forward test situation. Either way, fascinating as well, right? We close with that consolidation. Thursday, very interesting day. Consolidation two expansion, right? Started that consolidation two expansion in the Asian session here. We're then consolidating in the premium here. We then continue the expansion one more time and then reverse. So very fascinating, right? Sort of questioning, is this a retracement? Well, it's not a reversal of this magnitude, but kind of interesting, right? Retracement becoming reversal as well with that order block, changing the state of delivery as well. Simultaneously changing the state of delivery off of the, really that forming of the high day. So pretty fascinating, right? Price does not trade like first true presented order block of the day as well. Very, very nice. Um, Either way, fascinating day as far as Thursday goes in relation to this, this like weekly reversal template. Past few weeks we've seen basically just like, last week's template was Monday, Friday, just like down week, right? We still saw this down week type of action. Um, but again, like this intra-week reversal here off of the 1 hour, leading to some interesting insights. And following up here as well, consolidation, expansion, reversal. Consolidation, expansion, reversal. Back to that consolidation, right? Considering this like just consolidation. After this consolidation, you know, we break to and through, like very interesting first, hour here, breaking to and through the equal lows here. Like as we open, like boom, it's 0-0. We are in a consolidation. Sometime within this hour, there was this, sort of pump fake of expansion back into the consolidation to then truly, expand lower. So that's very fascinating as well. But either way, that's where we do see that consolidation to expansion to reversal. True reversal defined as, like obvious reversal when price trades to and through intraday high or low of day, right? Like expanding on the daily range, that is a definite reversal. Same thing as we saw with Thursday, expanding on the daily range, definite reversal. Trading to and through previous days lows, etc., or highs, depending on the direction of the reversal. Um, Obvious reversal as well. So, potential ways to classify that. But at the same time, too, I would say that's sort of like distinct from, well, it is the same situation as like what's happening intraday. What's the intraday, printing of the market. Um, but Thursday's, intraday delivery was like a weekly delivery of a reversal. So either way, fascinating. Bringing it back, right? Getting into the daily range and times of day of the, low of day and high of day. So here we got that, you know, AM low, PM high. Essentially AM, expansion, if you will. Well, I'd really say more like AM retracement. See that lunch? I mean, very interesting, right? Lunch expansion. Always fascinating when we see some type of activity like that. 13 candle, the 14 candle, right? First candle, the PM expansion, expansion to the consolidation. So pretty fascinating. Um, Monday here. Low resistance run as well. To and through these highs intraday. Coming up into the SIBI here. Eventually violating it, obviously, but pretty fascinating overall. Just the, especially during the PM, like literally just buy side delivery, AM expansion or PM expansion, lunch expansion. This is that 11 candle, that 10 candle, the 9 candle, AM expand, or excuse me, AM open is like somewhere in here. So we see that, sort of that initial pump fake higher to then drag and, induce the breakout shorts and then continue higher. Very fascinating look overall. Potentially even defines that, that quote unquote classic buy day. Um, Fascinating as well with that, low of day at 11. That final hour of the AM, putting in that low, having, scooped up the sell side. Um, very, very fascinating. Simultaneously just sort of subtly paying attention to, the daily range and how it relates to like the other, days of weeks daily ranges as well. Again, we see that low of day during that New York session. Again, same kind of action that we saw, right? Pump fake higher, inducing the breakout shorts. Pump fake higher, inducing the breakout shorts, and then going higher. So pretty fascinating as part of this, intra-week setup to then be, traded to and through institutional traders. Intra-week swing traders are like, putting their stops here, putting their stops, within this as well. So that is, very, very fascinating that we see this like pattern setting that up. So either way, late New York PM, right? Potentially even that, that quote unquote final hour of the day, 1600 to 1700, putting in that high of day within this consolidation, right? You know, Technically, same type of time, off of that technicality of the lower time frame, refinement. But we see that, that 1500, that 1600. So either way, that New York PM is a fascinating time of day to put in the high of day or low of day. And so potential retracement opportunities that are offered off of that and potentially delivering that in and of itself as well is fascinating. So here we got Wednesday. Um, that retracement as well is very fascinating. Again, the London. And again, the order block, right? See this, I mean, it's fuzzy here, right? Because this is not the actual chart. This is the photo of the chart. But see the open. There was no time where the previous candle's open was traded below as that order block, that up close candle, right? Traded below order block, except here, right? See it fail there. See it fail there as well. And then we see it, succeed, quote unquote, and be respected. Might have returned to the close here, but either way, we see that like locking in of the high of day with this order block look. So, this is kind of, something I'm just, like literally this is the first time I've looked at this and observed that, but sort of an objective observation of like the order block concept failing a few times and then locking in that, that low. And so depending on your conviction, depending on the, risk model as well, how do you potentially, identify and not even need to engage this, but just like determining and potentially, anticipating high of day or low of day and being able to trade within that. So very fascinating. Simultaneously, we'll get into it as well, but I mean, we already saw it with the ES, but the way that this in this array as well, the fair value gap here, beautiful, beautiful respect shown as far as um, we know the repricing of the fair value gap as well, the Judas swing. Very nice. Very nice. Classic look. Um, a type of repricing of a fair value gap as well, right? We see those, IOFED, whatever, institutional order. What does ICT call that shit? Institutional order flow entry drill, where it's literally just like, one tick, something like this, like bang. And then it just, I mean, ideally it's, it doesn't even consolidate. It's just like bang and it goes lower. But that one candle repricing, intra-candle, bold-faced candle repricing, potentially closed-faced, you know, showing that wick is always ideal as well. And then potentially respect shown to the wick as well as, consequent encroachment of the wick. And then simultaneously, same perspective, is there an order block within this as well? Is there an order block following this? Yes, like breaks down though, but still respecting this. See that change in the state of delivery as well. Bang. Very fascinating. So, that compared to boom, boom, turtle soup, change in the state of delivery, change in the state of delivery, change in, right? Like very, very nice. Um, and so we see these types of repricings within certain times. And we see that, Asian session, like this is left open. This is, 11, this is 10, this is 9. 9:30 somewhere in here. 9:30 just slams lower for the day. We retrace and then consolidate for the PM there. But putting this in place, right, as the, obviously what we've been talking about, but very fascinating within the intraday narrative as well, within the, one of the few times where potentially the breakout traders are rewarded. And then we see the consolidation. Simultaneously, the, induction of essentially like AM trailed stops, equal highs traded to and through. Simultaneously, SIBI is still respected one more time, right? Final inducement. It's very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. How you would expect, Asian to be used, and really almost like aggressive timing of the anticipated template of like basically like high of day or low of day in London or in overnight, and then AM or PM, like, or excuse me, and then like the respective, other daily level, the low of day or high of day that follows whatever that Asian, or excuse me, the London high was, the AM or, overnight level. Then we're, basically anticipating the PM level. I really butchered that. I guess what I mean is that like, classic template is essentially like, if bearish, London high of day, PM low of day. We see it really like an aggressive example of that, like the most extreme possible example of that. With this high of day, I believe this was at either 1 or 2, um, trading lower. So very, very fascinating. Yeah, there we see that high of day. Um, and then the, subsequent low of day at New York PM, that retracement, again, putting that, we've been talking about that concept of the low of day or high of day being put in place during New York PM. We see that retracement as well. So very fascinating. Essentially setting up that final move for the Friday expansion. And, obviously just the expansion in the, daily range, sub 100, sub 100, sub 50, bang, like above 100. So that is its own sort of concept, is fascinating. And then back, again with that, really this TGIF setup, classic AM expansion, PM reversal. I mean, really technically though, sort of a AM expansion, PM consolidation. But, if I sort of just like split the visual, including overnight, um, potentially even could be classified as like, sometime within the 9:30 induction to then trade higher. So either way, very fascinating. But really bringing it back to this consolidation, expansion, reversal. I guess, my mind kind of automatically associated the price engine with the AM PM template. And I guess that's why I called it the AM expansion PM reversal. But then when you actually look at it, it's really, AM expansion PM consolidation. Either way, very fascinating. And again with the lunch, NQ here, same perspective. Literally just the related market, the intermarket analysis, if you will, here with this, uh, you know, NASDAQ. Same situation, right? Literally same weekly template, but very fascinating, right? Trading to and through previous week's low. if you recall, right? ES did not do that. So again, that example of that intermarket analysis really kind of verifying like this move that we saw on Friday, the Friday AM, very volatile, very explosive, very fascinating how it was, occurring with this as well, going on. So yeah, that 1,204 handle weekly range, very fascinating. Again, same looks, right? Consolidation, expansion, retracement, expansion for that Monday. Classic buy day, if you will, right? And it's fascinating how, within like, you know, sort of like these definitions of the days, like AM open is 9:30 versus AM open is New York midnight is like, the institutional delivery versus potentially like true day delivery, or even like, electron, I don't know, whatever you want to classify it as. Um, there's different ways that the data can be collected is, really what I'm referring to. So here we see the Tuesday again, that retracement into the expansion. Pretty fascinating here with ES, right? This is ES. We see respect shown to the fair value gap here, sort of like a lighter repricing of the fair value gap here, a lighter retracing into previous day's range. Here with NASDAQ, we almost like trade, 2 and 3 previous days lower, basically like making equal lows. Like NASDAQ's daily range, or, the weekly delivery is more of like a consolidation up here. It's more like consolidation, expansion, potentially just consolidation, expansion, reversal, expansion, retracement, you know, expansion, reversal. But truly, like consolidation to expansion versus ES, I would say is more expansion, reversal, expansion, consolidation, reversal, right? There's sort of this, as ICT would say, phantom trend line, right? This induction of the trend line trader, reversal with the order block. Versus here, it's really just the consolidation situation. Very fascinating, right? We, obviously we violate the this level here as well for Monday. So sort of like an interesting way to get a gauge for the weekly delivery with these time-based, defined as like that AM fair value gap from Monday here. Like that is the only one here that could be defined, if you will. So either way, pretty fascinating. But still, same situation. Really just a deep retracement into previous day's range at the end of the day. And then we, continue higher, trade 2 and 3, previous day's high. Again, Wednesday, continues that expansion that we saw from Tuesday, following the retracement. Expanding on the weekly range, putting in that new high of week, and again with the reversal. Very fascinating. Expansion, reversal to the consolidation here. Pretty interesting as well here on NASDAQ. There was an interesting situation that I saw for the New York PM. This is the 1400 candle. Trading lower and then, trading to and through the AM trailed stops here. Very fascinating. ES did not do this. Right. We see that retracement, but it does not trade, right? It just puts in those equal highs. So that in and of itself is fascinating, but yeah. Again with the Thursday, very, very nice. Interesting as well how the SIBI on NASDAQ was essentially like larger, right, than the ES. And just that situation, like the Wednesday expansion was essentially larger on NASDAQ. It was basically the weekly range, right? Versus, we're still in the premium of the weekly range with ES. So that's pretty fascinating. Again, same look though, consolidation, expansion, reversal. Back to the consolidation, right? Out of that consolidation, again, still like opening up in the consolidation. Then we, technically do kind of trigger the expansion, micro retracement, if you will, to then continue, like to really, actually do the expansion. But, off of the 1 minute, off of the 5, there is that retracement here during this first hour. Pretty fascinating as its own study, the first hour. But either way, consolidation, expansion, reversal. So yeah, same situation, right? Again, with that low of day, that AM low of day, PM high of day, overnight high of day, AM low of day, pretty fascinating. We didn't see that on ES, if you recall, right? On ES, it traded to and through the intraday high, like made the high of day during the New York PM, during the lunch, etc. Wednesday, we see that high at 5, I believe, on ES. It was at 4, so that's pretty fascinating as well. Again, putting in that low of day and then consolidating. Thursday, again, beautiful look, right? Turtle soup, putting in that high of day at 2. Yes, it was put in place at 1. Very fascinating as well, right? Give me a second here. Okay, I just had to answer the door really quick. So, yeah, but either way, very fascinating, right? If you recall, at 2, high of day was put in place for NASDAQ here on ES. It was at 1, so very fascinating. Um, yeah, simultaneously, I mean, really coming from that perspective of that order block, same perspective, that we had on Wednesday as well. Really just zooming in here, we see that first hour. Second hour, this candle is higher than this candle, even though they look, basically the same. It's literally like a tick. But either way, we see that first example of the order block essentially like violated. We do simultaneously respect the Asian high, which is pretty fascinating, honestly. Essentially would expect that final turtle soup. Um, and so that's another example of the ES divergence as well, the intermarket divergence. Um, Changing the state of delivery, again, breaking down, right? Very fascinating. Consolidation to expansion, putting in that low of day at 1400 New York PM. So, yeah, very fascinating. Honestly, just kind of thrown off from answering the door. Um, but again, same perspective, right? Like intra-week reversal, very fascinating. Fascinating intra-week. We or excuse me, from the intra-market perspective, again, ES, sort of that phantom trend line. Nasdaq here, we see the consolidation. So, again with the quote unquote like AM expansion, PM reversal, but in reality, AM expansion, PM consolidation. So very fascinating as well. Um, Intra-week as well, right? Again, we see the example of the divergence trading to and through previous week's low on NASDAQ here, not doing that on ES. They're very fascinating. And again, like this AM session as its own session of study in alignment with that TGIF setup as well. So very fascinating. Um, I mean, I didn't really put it in the presentation here, but very fascinating from the new week opening gap perspective, trading to and through, and then returning for this daily template. So yeah, very fascinating. Again, just getting into the really the Asian session here for the final, the bonus review. So we got the Sunday Asian, right? This weekly open, very fascinating. As its own study, really just noting the new week opening gap, size of new week opening gap. Is that like up gap, if you will, or down gap. Um, and simultaneously that, 30 handle range here for ES. And very fascinating, right, to see a Asian session expansion. And I mean, it's obviously not a panacea, but I think something that I sort of assume, when we see these new week opening gaps is essentially to see it like, essentially like traded into at least once fairly early, potentially even this during this Sunday Asian session. Um, and so yeah, that was pretty fascinating to see as well here for Sunday. Saw the same thing on Nasdaq. Um, and simultaneously, first presented fair value gap of the week during the Asian session was respected. Was essentially like that like foundation of the narrative here for the essentially Judas swing, right? So very fascinating. On to the this should be called the Monday Asian session, but the quote unquote right Tuesday in the market, or Tuesday, but like Monday Asian, if you will. Either way, true consolidation, very small range, sub 15 handle, very fascinating. Nonetheless, though, we do see that consolidation to expansion, um, essentially in the premium, right? Like premium of previous day's range. So very fascinating. Putting in, essentially like beginning that retracement that we see during Tuesday here. And again, we were talking about this, but essentially trading to and through intraday high for ES. We don't see that on Nasdaq, right? Essentially just locking in the equal highs, going into the Asian, continuing higher, right? Setting up that Judas swing. So either way, pretty fascinating. And it's fascinating when you just continue to study these examples of the intramarket analysis. So again, right? Tuesday Asian, consolidation, expansion, retracement, right? Consolidation, expansion, retracement to then continue, expansion, putting in, that weekly high. So very fascinating. Wednesday here as well. The quote unquote like largest range for the weekly Asian sessions here. Consolidation, expansion, reversal. Pretty volatile and, I would say sort of like, in an excuse me, in an an anomaly of an Asian session, um, as compared to a, you know, sub 20 handle consolidation. So very fascinating. Um, Here we see the Thursday Asian session consolidation to expansion. Again, sort of, well, I mean, we see the consolidation here for the quote unquote Monday Asian session and the premium of previous day's range. We see essentially the reverse of that in the Thursday Asian session here. We see the consolidation and the discount of previous, but like sort of at that extreme, that previous, delivery of either high of day of low day. It's so very fascinating how like sort of the inverted narrative going on here as well. But either way, 20 handle range, right? Consolidation to expansion for the Thursday Asian session. Essentially kicking off that overnight expansion to and through previous day's range, putting in the low of day. expansion, to reversal again. Same situation here for NASDAQ. Again, with the Sunday Asian expansion. Again, we see that consolidation to expansion. Again, with the consolidation to expansion. Very fascinating. Right, yet another example of the essentially intra-market divergence. Wednesday Asian session low does not trade through, previous day's low. If you recall, and yes, it does. So that's very fascinating, right? Still see the consolidation, expansion, reversal. Especially, considering these, essentially like intra Asian session delivery. So here we got the Thursday Asian session, we got the consolidation to expansion. And again, like literally all of the Asian sessions from this week are the same. It's like all the same algorithmic, lining up of the markets are very fascinating. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Thanks for watching.